Good morning to you. See, we're among the frozen chosen. So glad to see you here. In this Advent season, we've been talking about the meaning and the message of the coming of the Christ of the cosmos to the babe in Bethlehem, and trying to understand what that means. And so today we're going to talk about what the title of the message is, The God of Surprises. The God of Surprises. Because God can surprise us in the Advent, and I'm sure most of us are old enough to have had a surprise or two through the Advent season, through these years. But God is the God of surprises, and it's easy for us to get into a rut or a routine, isn't it? We go to the work the same way, we come home from work the same way, we do the same things at school or the same things at Christmas time year after year, and there are many traditions that are worth perpetuating and keeping, but sometimes we get into a rut or a routine, and we've always done it this way. And we need to remember that the Advent tells us that God is the God of surprises. I remember one of our board members in our first pastorate explained to me the definition of a rut. He said, a rut is a grave with both ends kicked out. So we get into those ruts, and we need to examine them from time to time. And the Advent season is a good time to remind ourselves that God is a God of surprises. Today we're going to look at a verse that's in the Old Testament and New Testament. And in the New Testament, it's found in the nativity scene in Matthew's gospel. Whenever the wise men come and ask for the king, and Herod asked his religious leaders where this happened, and they responded quickly, in Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what the prophets have written. Prophecy is good. I remember studying it intensely to try to put this all together, and man, the prophecies of the Old Testament that are fulfilled in Christ, the probability of that happening is astronomical. And you read these prophecies and confirms what the Bible tells us about the coming of our Lord. And so today we're going to look, instead of at Matthew's gospel, we're going to look at Micah. So if you go to Micah chapter 5 in the Old Testament, I'll make a couple observations about Micah for us so we understand a little bit about the book. First of all, his name means who is like Jehovah. Now, can you imagine naming your child that way? Who is like Jehovah? What that child would have to live up to all through life. Who is like Jehovah? One time I was visiting in the hospital, and the husband of the patient told me about a family, a couple that they had a baby, and they named him Odd. Now that is an odd name, but Odd went through life, everybody calling him Odd. Well, when he was 60 years of age, he decided, no more. This ain't going to happen. He said, when I die, I don't want my name on the tombstone. I just want the date I was born, the date I died. And so 15 years later or so, he died. And everybody walking through the cemetery would go, isn't that odd over there? So even in death, the dude had to put up with a weird name. But who is like Jehovah? That's Micah's name. And that gives us insight into what he's going to write us, because I hope by the time we're finished this morning, in these few minutes together, that you will begin to think like Micah, who is like Jehovah, because we have a God who is a God of surprises. The next observation about Micah, he was a contemporary of Isaiah, so 2,700 years ago they lived. And Isaiah is called the Bible in miniature. And if you read the first 39 chapters of Isaiah, it's all law, Old Testament. Then the last 27 chapters are all New Testament or grace. Well, Isaiah is the Bible in miniature, and Micah is Isaiah in miniature. And he follows along very closely to how Isaiah goes through the process. Also, you might say that Micah is the Reader's Digest condensed version of Isaiah, and Isaiah is the Reader's Digest condensed version of the Bible. Secondly, Micah was a prophet to the poor people, whereas Isaiah was a prophet to the wealthy. And Micah gives us the birth of Jesus, Isaiah gives us the death of Jesus. Micah was a country preacher. Isaiah was a city preacher. One thing unique about Micah is that he gives us the very place where Jesus would be born. And as I said, prophecy is great to study. If you're struggling in your faith and you have doubts about the Christian faith, prophecy is an excellent way to gird up your understanding of how the Bible fits together so beautifully and had to be inspired by God. One other, as Isaiah gives us that, or Micah gives us a place, I hope that through this you get the idea that God is a God of surprises. And when he sent his son, that was the greatest surprise the world has ever had. This is how God made steps towards humanity to redeem us. Now think of that. If you were going to launch a worldwide movement, would you do what God did? Would you have a baby? I mean, a movement that would last for 2 millennia, 2,000 years, and be over nearly 3 billion people on planet Earth, and you would start with a baby? Most of us would start with an army, right? We'd build up, we'd have our Star Force, and we'd have all kinds of military and all that. But not God, because God is a God of surprises. So today we want to discover some things in this little section of Micah 5. And in verse 2 we read, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah," now those are usually the two words that describe this little village outside of Jerusalem. "Though you are small among the clans of Judah," this was a small little borough. You know, that carol says, "Oh, little town of Bethlehem," is really real. It was a little town, and it was an insignificant town. I mean, you would say of this place, it's so small, its zip code is a fraction. This is a really small place where we're going. And it was an insignificant place until the birth of Jesus. Remember on that night, the night he was born, angels came to Bethlehem. Shepherds came to Bethlehem to worship Jesus. Then the wise men came. Now, we don't know exactly when they got there. Some traditions say on the 12th day of Christmas, but some say up to 2 years. That's why when Herod found out that it was Bethlehem, he had all the male infants under the age of 2 killed. He didn't want a king to compete with him. So the wise men came, and if you read Matthew's gospel, it says they didn't come to the manger, they came to the house. So between the birth and that time, we don't know how long it was, but it was a period of time. But the point is, Bethlehem was insignificant until Jesus came. And from that day until now, except this year, I guess because of COVID, it's affected the traveling to Bethlehem, but people have done it year after year to come to that little town of Bethlehem. So let's relate that to us. You know, I've read where 98% of people have a self-image problem. And the other 2% are really in denial, aren't they? I mean, we all have a self-image problem. Why? Because we've been affected by the fall, right? The Bible says all, and all means all have sinned. So every one of us is dysfunctional in some way. We're imperfect. And I know as a teenager, we all look at the mirror and we want to be cool and all that, but we have problems too. We all have self-image problems. We are insignificant until we come to meet Jesus and we understand who we really are in Christ. You see, the sad thing about our educational system today is that we're humanistic. We rely on human stuff to make us feel good, right? But as Christians, we understand all of that in the world will not make us deal with our self-image problem until we come to know Jesus Christ. Because we have these tapes playing in our head. Why can't you ever do that? Why can't you be like your sister or your brother? Or you'll never amount to anything. We've all heard those things. And then we go to school, right? And however long you spend in school, teachers are always grading you, and they're I mean, I may be dumb, I'm dumb, so you might be smarter than me, but I never got a perfect from any teacher because they're always looking for ways to score you. And then the bell rings and you go out in the hall and you have to deal with the kids in the hallway and somebody coming after you and making fun of you or whatever. And then through life, we all have this significant self-image problem. That's part of human nature. Now, we know the Bible teaches that we are made in the image of God and the likeness of God. And even though we have fallen, that's been marred, but that was our initial. That's humanity. I read the other day, and I was glad to see this from Christian thinkers, that to deal with racism would be, we could address that if we understand that every one of us, every person is made in the image and likeness of God, even though he or she is marred by sin, and even in paganism. We need to understand that we have that divine image, but the tension comes because of sin. But the Bible teaches us that when Jesus comes into our life and when you fully understand who you are in Christ, and that takes a while. Some scholars say that 85% of Christians don't understand who they are in Christ. We feel insignificant, we feel we can't, inadequate, we have all this struggle. But when you know who you are in Christ, you're adequate. None of us is ever fully adequate in his or her own ability, but in knowing who we are in Christ. In 1974, I was at a Christian counseling conference in Denver, Colorado, and I heard this formula for the first time, and it began to revolutionize my understanding of who I am and also how to help others. Remember, be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle. And when you understand this formula, you can really accept yourself and reach out to others. The formula is this: God plus me equals a whole person. Now, I want to make sure we're all on the same page on this, so I want us to say this together, okay? God plus me equals a whole person. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. God plus me equals a whole person. Now, I know it's cold and you're probably not warmed up, but how about warming up a little more on this thing? On the count of three again. 1, 2, 3. God plus me equals a whole person. Understand that. That will help you face all the challenges that you and I encounter in life, because you are significant. Yes, we've been affected by the fall. Yes, we have our imperfections and our blind spots and our weaknesses and all these issues. But when we are in Christ and we understand who we are, we're significant. C.S. Lewis made an interesting observation. He said, if you and I could see what each other will be in eternity, we'd be tempted to bow down and worship one another. Now, we won't worship one another. Don't make that conclusion. He wasn't saying that, but he was just saying, this is who we are. We're not just here to live and get through school finally, and then go to work, and I owe, so it's off to work I go, and all that, and then die. No, we have a far more glorious destiny, and we are significant when we understand God plus me equals a whole person. And that's what the birth of Jesus does to the smallest thing, even that little town of Bethlehem. But to you and me, we become significant in the eyes of God. No wonder with Micah we say, who is like Jehovah? This is the God of surprises, what he's done for you and me. Now, in verses 4 through 5, we see the work that Jesus does for us. Verse 4, he will stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God. And they will live securely, for then his greatness will reach to the ends of the earth, and he will be their peace. Now, if you study the book of Micah, chapters 4 and 5, most scholars agree this is talking about the millennial reign of Christ. Millennial is simply the word 1,000, the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ. Now, there's debate on what that is. My personal position, I think most Southern Baptist position, is premillennial reign. We're not in the millennium yet. I mean, it's premillennial reign, and I believe in pre-tribulation rapture that we'll get out of this. But it doesn't matter what your thinking is. It's all going to pan out, right? In the end, pan-tribulation, pan-millennial, all that. We can disagree on it, but the point is that this is a reign of Christ where he will rule and reign. Now, it's obvious we're not there. Back at the beginning of the 20th century, many thought we were entering into the millennial, and then the World War I, World War II came along. We're not there. Today, it's the rancor in the Middle East and the different ethnicities fighting around the world. So we're not in the millennial yet, but we will rule and reign with him. Some of you may end up being the mayor of Madison. Wouldn't you like to straighten Madison out? Or the mayor of Chicago to get rid of that mess. We're going to rule and reign with Christ in the millennial time for 1,000 years. And when you think of the millennium, it's a time of peace. There's that phrase that many people take out of its context because this is the millennium, but they try to apply it to today, and some of them become, they're peaceniks who they would make war to get peace, which is contradictory, but they quote this from Micah where they say, well, beat your swords into plowshares. You probably have heard that. No, that's not for now, that's for the millennium. And that's a time of peace that there will be for all of us. And it'll be a time when God reunites Israel and we'll be with them in the land and all of that stuff. But you read the book of the Revelation, and we have some wars that are still ahead of us, don't we? That's why, I want to be caught up in the rapture, because I don't want to mess around with what's going on planet Earth after the rapture. But anyway, it's yet to come, and it's not a time of peace. But Jesus will do that. And notice the relevance for you and me. He will shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord and the majesty of his name. They will live securely. Security and peace. That's what our life as Christians is intended to be. That's an important surprise of the Advent, to remember that. And many of us can quote Psalm 23:1. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack anything. And that you could take it at face value. When you let the Lord shepherd you through the teenage years, when you let the Lord shepherd you through the first 10 years of your marriage, or you let the Lord shepherd you when you get near your 50s in the workplace, and they begin to look at the salary of you versus the salary of a 30-year-old, and all of those things. If you let the Lord shepherd you through that, you can have security and you can have peace because he will be with you. Now, when God gives us peace, there are two phrases you probably think of in this. The first is to have peace with God. To have peace with God. Most personal evangelism that I've done, one-to-one, talking to people and talking about, God and sin, and, they say, I don't have a problem with God, and people say that in the world today. I don't have a problem with God. The problem is God has a problem with us, right? We have rebelled. We have disobeyed. We are rebellious, self-centered. And we have a problem. And God has a problem with us. And we need to get the peace of God with God because of that problem. One day I was getting gas in Lakeville, Minnesota, and our car at that time, we were living in Southern California and had California plates on it. So the guy came over to me. We were pumping gas there together, and he said, hey, where do you live in California? I said, Palm Springs. He said, he said, my golfing buddies and I went there a few years ago. It's a great place to golf, isn't it? I said, yeah, you bet. There's a lot of good golf courses there. And he said, have you ever ridden that tram? And I said, oh, yeah, many times. There's a tourist trap there. If you ever get out that way, it's really worth the trip. It takes you through 6 microclimates from 450 feet up to 8,000. And the way it has these towers where the cable car will come up and whoop, and it'll shake and make a lot of noise. They said, well, the guy said, we had to get one of our members drunk before we could get him up there. So he was up there, and when it would hit that thing, he would scream and say, oh, God. And the second time he did it, he said, oh, God. And a little old lady grabbed his shirt and said, young man, are you on talking relationship with God? You see, we need to be on talking relationship with God. We need to have peace with God. And people need that not only in life, but before they die, to have peace with God and knowing through Jesus Christ. You see, this peace with God doesn't come because you joined the Christian church. The Christian church don't save you. Christianity doesn't. Islam doesn't. Buddhism doesn't. Judaism doesn't. It's a personal relationship, isn't it? Through faith in Jesus Christ, to understand that he came as a baby, he died on the cross, and then God surprised again by the resurrection. And when we have that relationship, we have peace with God. And that can help us with anything in life. We found this out in China. In 1950, when China Revolution started, they expelled all the Christian missionaries. And the best guess estimate was that there were 1 million Christians in China. 70 years later, the most conservative estimate I've read is there are 35 million Christians in China. The most liberal, and this comes from the Communist Party, they said there are 300 million Christians. And that's counting evangelicals, Protestants, Catholics, and then a lot of the cults. So it's inflated. But the more conservative, even if you take 35 million in 70 years, 35 million, that's a lot. No country has had that kind of growth dramatically, but it was under persecution. It was under suffering because these people had the peace with God and they could survive even that. But not only is it peace with God, it's the peace of God, isn't it? And that's what you and I should appreciate, I know, in our spiritual journeys. I've heard many people say, I don't know how she faced stage 4 cancer. I don't know how he survived getting fired at 53 years of age. I don't know how that teenager faced the tremendous bullying on the internet. I don't know. All of that stuff. It's the peace of God that passes all understanding that will sustain you and me through the challenges of life. One of the best books Edith Schaefer ever wrote was a book on suffering. And it's out of print, I know, but if you can find it, it's really worth reading about. And Edith Schaefer makes the point that it's in our suffering that we can have our greatest ministry for God. Imagine that. When people see Christians going through tremendous suffering and they have the peace of God, that's the beauty of knowing Jesus. That's the beauty of understanding what the Advent is all about. And with Micah, we say, who's like Jehovah? I mean, God is the God of surprises. And if you don't see that in your day-to-day journey, you're going to have great doubts when you face your own death. I mean, it's that, everybody struggles with doubt about God. And today it's, the intellectuals are attacking in major ways. But if you experience the peace of God throughout your spiritual life, that's that existential nowness of the Christian faith. You're able to face the inevitable that will come to all of us. So this morning, there are 3 compelling conclusions I want to make out of Micah this morning. Jesus' birth gives significance to even the smallest thing. And you and I are small. Sometimes we think we're pretty big and pretty cool, but we're small in the big scheme of things with 6 to 7 billion. The number's hard to keep up with on planet Earth today. But when we're a Christian, we know who we are in Christ. We understand we are significant. Stop playing those tapes from childhood about you're not good enough. It's amazing, isn't it, when we get back together with families at Christmas time, you may be siblings 50 years of age, And you still act like little teenagers when you get together. You go right back to that. Stop letting those tapes play in our head. Understand. Think theologically. As Chuck Swindoll said, our problem is not that we're logical, it's that we are not theological. Think theologically about who we are in Christ. You're important. You're gifted. I mean, the beauty of the New Testament teaching is that it's no longer just an official priest that has religion, but all of God's children have gifts and contribution to the ministry of the body of Christ. We've been purchased by the blood of Christ, and so we are significant. Secondly, is that Jesus brings security and peace. That, of course, is one big way of saying he brings salvation, isn't it? And aren't you glad that you believe that once you're saved, you're always saved? I mean, I would dread to think that I couldn't depend upon that salvation when I had a bad day, because we all have bad days. And notice I said days, plural. Not just one bad day. I wish I had just one bad day and that's it. But we all have those. And we're secure in Christ. We're significant. And God loves us, and he paid a tremendous price for us. And so we have that peace with God and of God. And then with Micah, we say, who's like Jehovah? God's a God of surprises. Enjoy the Advent season. Oh, you know, the secularization of it is kind of hard to take sometimes, and it comes at us so much. And even on TV right now, all the TV stations are playing these Christmas things, and they're basically secularized, or even the animated things are being pushed beyond appropriateness, should I say. But enjoy the Advent season, because that baby in the manger was Jesus Christ, and God gave the greatest surprise with the greatest gift of his Son. Let's pray together. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this season of the year. We thank you that we can reflect on what you did for us. And really, there is no God like you. There are many gods on this planet and people worship, but we thank you that you've allowed us to know the one true and living God through faith in Jesus Christ. And now, God, we pray that you'd help us as we come even to the table of the Lord and remember what he did for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.